On today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast, the legendary Michael Caine announces that he's basically retired from acting. How Kast Media stole $100,000 from us. 5 things that Star Wars needs to do to succeed as they move forward. And also, there is a possibility the writer's strike could end today. And if it doesn't, it could be a long time. We're going to discuss that and a whole bunch more. The John Campea Show podcast starts right now. Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet, the John Campea Show podcast, coming from right here in our quaint little studio, brought to you in part by our friends at Mint Mobile. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around so we talk about our favorite things in the world. Movies and movie news, TV and streaming, all sorts of good stuff. Not just giving you our opinions, but hopefully giving you some information and context so you guys can form your own well-informed opinions, whether they're the same or completely different from ours. I'm joined in studios today by Ray Ora. Woo! Jonathan Boyko's here. Woo! Chris Carr is here.
Woo!
And she's not down with the Ric Flair.
Game day.
I'm, of course, here. Most importantly, you guys are here. Thanks so much for making this show part of your day. Here's how the show's going to go. We're going to start off by talking about those topics I listed off. And then we're going to take questions from our YouTube channel members. We ask them every day to send us some topics, and we get through just as many as we can every day. All right. With that down, guys, let's get things started here, shall we? We're going to start with this. Michael Caine might not be the first name that jumps to your head when you say, name the greatest actors of all time or name the most iconic actors of all time. But once his name is brought up, there's a reverence that comes in. He is simply one of the most iconic screen presences we have ever had in the business. The man is the holder of 5 Academy Award nominations as an actor, 2 Academy Award wins. He won for Cider House Rules in 2000, and he won for Hannah and Her Sisters back in 1987. 3 other nominations on top of that. And of course, most of today's generation would all just remember him as Alfred in the legendary Christopher Nolan Batman series, in which he kicked a lot of ass. And he's just awesome. And let's not forget Jaws Revenge. I mean, the all-time classic, Jaws Revenge. One time, Michael Caine was asked, what did you think about your movie, Jaws Revenge? And he says, it bought my mother a wonderful house. That's all he said about it, and there you go. Well, apparently Michael Caine, who's an older gentleman, has basically said, I'm kind of retired from acting now. And he said it in a very Michael Caine way. This is what he said. This is through the Hollywood Reporter. Said, Caine said he'd reached the point of his career where he was now sort of retired from acting. I'm bloody 90 now, and I can't walk properly and all that, he said. I've had the best possible life that I could have thought of, the best possible wife and the best possible family. They may not be a family that other people would say is the best possible family, but the best possible family for me. When asked what he wants to be remembered for, Caine answered, the fact that I remained an actor all my life and I never went into anything else. I never left and I never wanted to leave. It is very difficult for me because you got to understand, he got his first Academy Award nomination when I was born. Like, he has been around. Michael Caine has been a prominent presence in movies my entire lifetime. And as such, it is very hard for me to imagine the movie world landscape without some Michael Caine movie coming out at some point, or at least some movie. He stopped being a leading man a while ago, although he's been the lead in a couple of things the last couple of years, but it's hard for me to imagine that. He's just got such a presence. I don't know if it's his accent, his stature. A lot of people forget he's a big man. Michael Caine's a big man. He wrote one of the really great books on acting as well. The man was fabulous. And if he is indeed retired, because, a lot of times some older stars pass away, but a lot of the times those are stars who hadn't done anything maybe for a decade or 2 decades or 3 decades, right? They just decided to get out of acting and live the rest of their lives. But Michael Caine has been an active part of the movie scene my entire lifetime. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around this. Anyway, Chris, I think everybody would think, yeah, you're 90. Well deserved, man. Yeah. Take it easy. Retire if you want. I don't know about you. For me, it's hard for me to imagine movies without him. When you think of Michael Caine, what are the movies or whatever projects that stand out most to you?
I'm gonna get the biggest eye roll out of Ray. Muppet Christmas Carol.
Oh my God, where he played Scrooge.
Oh, he's so good in it. And it's because he is such a great actor. And it set this bar for how you interact with the Muppets of, he said, I'm going to treat them like my peers. I'm going to treat them like they are Shakespearean caliber actors, which they are. And that's why that film is so good, because he acts like everyone there is just another person who he's acting with. Now, I remember back in 2001, he had to kind of backtrack some rumors because he had said, well, I'm really focusing on writing more than acting these days. I'm basically retired. And then his agents were like, no, you're not, Michael. No, you're not. So I think it is at 90 with after such a incredible resume. I mean, his resume is basically just a CVS receipt at this point.
Yeah.
It's so long and he's done so much starting back in the 1960s?
Yep.
And if you want just a really great Michael Caine impression, because I think people doing impressions of him is one of the things also that has added to just his notoriety because of that Michael Caine voice. Simon,
you do a pretty good job.
Thank you. Simon Pegg and Nick Frost do bloopers in both Hot Fuzz, and I think they do fake Star Wars ones as well.
What, of Michael Caine doing Star Wars characters?
Yeah, with them doing different voices where it's usually Simon Pegg being Michael Caine. And I highly recommend it. But obviously this Christmas season, watch Muppet Christmas Carol and give Michael his roses.
By the way, Michael Caine's first listed credit on IMDb is 1946.
Jeez.
Now, he didn't do another one for 10 years. His next one after that is Panic in the Parlor in 1956. And then after that, it's just 8 movies every year. Look at the length of this thing. How much have I scrolled and I'm only on 1967? And I keep scrolling. There I'm into the 1970s. Keep scrolling. I mean, this dude.
Jaws of Revenge.
That was totally by accident that I ended on Jaws the Revenge. The greatest Michael Caine film of all time. Anyway, guys, the question is for you. When you think of Michael Caine, if he is indeed now retiring, he's now saying he can't walk properly anymore and stuff like that. I mean, the dude's 90 and he's a big dude. What do you think of when you think about the career of Michael Caine? I mean, obviously a lot of people's going to be the Batman films, but what else stands out to you? Let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that all down, I thought we would touch on this today. I mentioned maybe about a month ago, maybe a little over a month ago, that I got ripped off over $100,000 by our ad agency. And we changed ad agencies. We're with a great ad agency now. Thank you, Cast, for being so great. But yeah, we got ripped off. Now, you guys might have seen recently this week, more and more stories are now popping up by other people who were ripped off by that same agency. People like, who's the wrestling guy again? Not Paul, I almost said Paul.
Theo Vaughn?
No, well, no, not Theo Vaughn, but the wrestling manager.
Shoot. Let me look at it.
Now I can't even remember his name, but Cornette.
Jim Cornette.
Jim Cornette. You might have seen that. Damn it. Why am I freezing on his name now? Well, I mean, Brendan Schwab put some up. CoffeeZilla put up a thing about it. Philip DeFranco did a thing on this yesterday.
Dan Murrell did, right?
Well, yeah, today Dan Murrell, who's under the same business management that I'm under as well. We're under the same thing together. Put up as well. And I thought I would tell the story about how we lost and how it came to be that I had $100,000 sitting there one day, and then the next day it was gone. And how did that all happen? Well, here's the basic story. By the way, I'm telling the story on my best recollection. I might have a percentage point or two off here or there, but this is all to the best of my recollection. So here's basically how the whole system with ad agencies work. Okay. Take a look at this. So on the one hand, you have advertisers, you got the agency, and you got the creator. In this case, a very attractive me. So here's what happens. We get the ad agency who has and builds the relationship with all of the advertisers. Advertisers like our advertisers, Mint Mobile, Manscaped, Masterclass, Rocket Money, Quip, HelloFresh, on and on and on. All these fantastic sponsors that we have on the show. Now, what happens is Kast Media, on our behalf, as the agency here, will make the individual deals for our show. And then the way it works is the advertisers directly pay, you can see the red arrows there, will directly pay Kast Media what they owe us. Then Kast Media keeps, I believe it was 20%, and then they pass the rest of our money on to us. So the advertisers don't pay us directly. They pay the ad agency, and then the ad agency keeps a cut and then pays us the rest. That is how it's supposed to function. And that is how it did function for a while. Now, coming up near the end of our relationship with Kast Media, I started recognizing that a payment was a bit late and wondering, oh, this is weird, because they had never been late. Kast Media had never been late paying us. And I want to make sure it's very, very clear here. The problem is none of our sponsors. All of the sponsors paid. All the sponsors did exactly what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to remit payment to the agency, who was then in turn supposed to pay us. All of our great advertisers and sponsors did exactly what they were supposed to do. They've been awesome. But we noticed it was a little bit late. And it got to the point where we sat down, me and my business guy, we sat down, we looked at the books. It's like we were owed over $100,000. Not a lot over $100,000, but over $100,000. And that's when we started to find out that Kast Media was in a lot of financial trouble. And we were like, okay. Now this is where it got really shady, okay? Because under normal circumstances, when a company like Kast or others may owe you money, they'll want to start to discuss how we're going to pay you back and all that kind of stuff. They'll at least try. They'll at least, right? But this is where it got kind of shady. See, Kast Media, because they were in financial trouble, it came out, and you can take a look at this, that they were going to sell themselves to a very big podcasting company. I'm sure many of you have heard of them, to a much bigger podcasting organization called Podcast One. All right. So Kast was going to sell themselves to Podcast One, but here's the catch. Podcast One was only going to go through with the acquisition if at least 70% of Kast Media's clients, I being one of them, also re-upped with Podcast One. If we would sign an agreement that said, yep, we'll stay on for, it was a 2 to 3 year agreement. I can't remember which, but it was either 2 or 3 year commitment that said we were going to stay on and we were going to work with Podcast One. And here's what Kast Media said to us when I would go to them. Yeah, but guys, you owe us $100,000. Their response was essentially, yeah, and you know what? Good news. We think we can get you your $100,000 if you'll just sign this 2 to 3 year commitment sheet that you'll stay on with Podcast One. Like, but what if we don't want to? And by the way, this is no shade being cast on Podcast One. They're a wonderful company, as far as I know. But it's like, what if we don't want to go with Podcast One? Oh, well, that would be a shame, because then we can't guarantee that you get the money that you're already owed. And we're like, huh, all right. And then I start thinking, well, maybe going with Podcast One wouldn't be such a bad idea. Then that's when the real shit started dripping out of the underwear, because then this is what they say to me. When I go, okay, so if we did this, theoretically, if I did sign up with this extension with Podcast One, who's a good company, how fast will I get this money that I'm owed? And they're like, oh, well, this is the best part. Like, we'll give you like, and again, I might be off by a few percentages here and there and a little bit of the timing, so forgive me, but I'm giving this the best of my recollection. We'll give you like 10 to 20% of the money you're owed, and then we will pay off the rest that we owe you over the course of the next 2 years. And 50% of what we owe you, instead of giving you cash, we'll give you stock or shares in Podcast One. And I'm like, so even under this situation that I don't want, you're saying you would pay me if I signed this 2 to 3 year commitment, which I don't want to sign. But even if I do it, you're only going to give me 10 to 20% of what you owe me, the rest of which you're saying you're going to pay me back, but over the course of the next year or two. Oh, and even then it's only about half of it, because the other half you're going to give it to me in stock, which could be useless tomorrow. And I'd be under a brand new deal that I'd have to stay under and be obligated to for the next 2 to 3 years, when I have no idea if the offer would be good. And by the way, the new deal that I would have to sign, remember I said Kast Media was keeping 20%? The new deal I would have to sign would be that the ad agency would keep 30%. And we're like, no, because even if we sign this deal, we may not actually get our money. You're not actually paying us back. You're just saying you're going to pay us back, and half of it would be in stock that could be useless tomorrow. And this all took place over the course of a couple of weeks, which I don't know if you know this. I'm Italian. I can get a little upset. Oh, I got upset. Thankfully, after all that, we just decided, you know what? It sucks. I am not in a position that I can just take $100,000 hit out of nowhere, but taking the $100,000 hit is a better alternative to what we'd have to enter into under very nebulous circumstances with very shady people. Not podcast one, but with whatever terms Kast. And at that point, I didn't even believe anything Kast was telling me. I couldn't believe anything that they would say. So ultimately, decided to bite the bullet. We signed on with the fabulous ad agency we're with now called AdCast. Thank you so much to you guys who've maintained our relationship with all of our sponsors and our fantastic. Listen, we have so many sponsors, it's crazy. Like, we have way more sponsor than any other show out there that's our size. Like, way more. We have a terrific relationship with our sponsors. They're absolutely fantastic, and we're very grateful for them. But bent over, fucked, and then told to like it. That's basically what happens with us, and how I lost $100,000 just like that. And I still remember the day I found out, because I was on the phone in my office, which is over there. And I'm sure Ray and Jonathan could hear the conversation.
Yeah, we heard it.
Which was an elevated volume conversation.
It was very loud and clear what you were trying to
Ray just
across.
slowly kind of like
I walked out. I was actually
of the building.
Every time I'm going to be honest here. Every time I hear you yelling and there's a closed door,
How often do you hear me
no,
yell?
but if it does happen,
He gets up and walks out, and I just keep
walk
working.
out
I'm like,
because
well,
I can't
hey.
hear you like that, man. I can't hear you like that.
I came out, and I remember coming out and telling Jonathan and Ray what just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And like, we just got ripped off $100,000. And like, what? It was not fun.
It's
not fun.
unfortunate.
Because here's the thing, when you're somebody like us, like your little YouTube channel and doing what we're doing, that $100,000 was accounted for. Like, we had already knew what we were supposed to be putting that $100,000 towards, paying bills and salaries and like equipment and all this kind of stuff. It was already budgeted for, and then it was gone, and it sucks. And there are people out there who lost more money than me.
Mm-hmm.
There are a bunch of people who lost a little bit less, but there are some people, I mean, one creator lost like 1.4 million out of this.
350K for another one.
Yeah, it was just awful and terrible. So yes, when you see these stories online that Philip DeFranco's talking about and Theo Vaughn is talking about and whatever, we were part of that.
And maybe this could be a lesson for any up and coming podcasters that are just starting out, maybe to like look out for who you're dealing with and make sure.
Yep.
You know,
Because you know what, like, I do my due diligence, right?
Yeah. No, this was not.
But understand that even if you do your due diligence, you never know. Just try to prepare yourself for the worst at all times, and it was tough. So anyway, that's the story about, to the best of my recollection, about how we got screwed out of over $100,000 on our little YouTube channel. So there it is. But all we can do now is look to the future and make the best of it. All right, guys. With that down, we are still today going to talk about the 5 things that we think Star Wars needs to do to succeed moving forward. Also, the writer's strike, there's a possibility, there's reports coming out that it could end today or last a hell of a lot longer. We're going to discuss that, but before we do, we're going to take a moment and talk about a couple of those mentioned sponsors that we have here on the show, our wonderful friends over at Rocket Money and Quip. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Rocket Money. Did you know that the average person has around 12 paid subscriptions, and they might not even remember to subscribing to half of those? If you have no idea just how much you're spending each month, you need Rocket Money. It's this great app that tracks all of your expenses so you know exactly where your money is going. I recently just found out that over 80% of people have subscriptions that they've completely forgotten about. Seriously, think about how many free trials you subscribe to that you just probably never canceled. And that's why I'm such a big fan of Rocket Money, because I was one of those people. When I signed up to Rocket Money, I was stunned to find out that a gym I had belonged to in another city I lived in, I had still been paying my dues to for over 2 years. Also, that music subscription service I use, yeah, I forgot I was subscribed to 2 other ones. That's where Rocket Money comes in, because Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. With over 3 million users and counting, Rocket Money customers have saved on average of $720 a year. So stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and manage your money the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/Campea. That's rocketmoney.com/Campea. rocketmoney.com/Campea. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Quip. Guys, you know that good health starts with good habits, and Quip makes it easy by delivering all the oral care essentials that you need to care for your mouth. For example, their incredible electric toothbrush. Guys, I've been using electric toothbrushes for years, and this is easily the best one I've ever owned. Timed sonic vibrations with 30-second pulses to guide a dentist-recommended 2-minute clean. A lightweight and sleek design for adults and kids with no wires or bulky charger to weigh you down. Reusable handles in a range of sleek metal hues, as well as bright plastic colors, sure to make a pop on your bathroom counter. Skip the batteries and snap into healthy habits with the new rechargeable electric toothbrush. All the features of the original Quip, plus 1 magnetic charge, powers up to 3 months of brushing. In addition to brush heads, Quip also delivers fresh floss, toothpaste, mouthwash, and gum refills every 3 months from just $7. So if you go to getquip.com/Campea right now, you'll get 20% off any electric toothbrush, mint and gum dispenser, or water flosser. That's your 20% off any electric toothbrush, mint and gum dispenser, water flosser at getquip.com/Campea. That's GETQUIP.com/Campea. Quip, the good habits company. And thank you to our friends at Rocket Money and Quip for sponsoring this episode of the John Campea Show podcast. All right, guys, with that down, let's move on to this, shall we? You know, Star Wars is basically my life and breath. I mean, it's Star Wars is my earliest childhood memory. It's the exact reason why I got into the film industry, all that kind of stuff. It's the most precious thing in the world to me. But I mean, we all can agree it's in a bit of a precarious spot, right? I mean, can we at least agree on that? Some would say it's much worse than that. Some say a little better, but I think we can all agree it's in a bit of a precarious spot. So the question that got brought up to me is, well, what would you say the things that are Star Wars needs to do moving forward to try to get everybody back on board and to get people back on board? And that is specifically the topic of today's Mint Mobile Hotline question of the day. Listen, if you guys got a question or a topic for our show and you'd like to hear your voice on our show, go ahead and call our Mint Mobile Hotline anytime 24/7 at 951-268-4259. We pick 1 or 2 questions out every day, and today's is specifically about what does Star Wars need to do right now? Check it out.
Hey, John, this is Matthew from Palm Springs, Florida. I was wondering, you did a list of the 10 things wrong with the MCU right now and the 10 things that James Gunn needs to do with the DCU moving forward. I was wondering, since you think that Kathleen Kennedy is on her way out by the end of the year, what would be like your 10 things or your number of things that you would advise new leadership to do with Star Wars once they get into the position?
All right, Matthew, thanks a lot for calling that in. And yeah, I think there are a couple of 5, what I would say the 5 pillars, philosophical pillars, I think they would need to adopt moving forward to try to get the vast majority of people on board with Star Wars. Now, again, look, at the end of the day, the main thing is make great movies. Like we said with the James Gunn topic, that's obvious. We don't have to mention that. The number one thing is just make great movies. That's hard. But what are some things philosophically that they need to do? All right, let's go over and take a look at this. The first thing, and I think all of us in the world would agree with this, the first thing they need to do is have a frickin' plan. I mean, that's really where everything fell apart with the new, listen, the new Star Wars got off to a great start. The Force Awakens, not everybody loves it, but most people loved it. Broke the all-time box office record for biggest domestic box office in history. I don't think that record's ever going to be broken. I loved it. Like I said, me and Schnepp would go watch it almost every afternoon because we were right across the street from the AMC Burbank 16. But you can get away with one movie when you don't really have a plan. Eventually, it starts to catch up with you. And you could see the cracks in the armor in the Last Jedi. Overall, I still like The Last Jedi, but I had some significant problems with it, many of which came from the fact that they didn't have a plan. And then by the time you got to The Rise of Skywalker, forget about it. I mean, you can just tell, like, what was the point of everything? Is they had absolutely no plan. They were winging it the entire time they were doing it. And it ultimately, like I said, you can get away with it for maybe a movie or a bit, but eventually it catches up to you, and it caught up to them. They need to have a good concrete plan that has some flexibility built into it. Yes, a little bit of flexibility, but at least know where you're going. Because I guarantee you, when they were shooting The Force Awakens, ain't nobody on that set, including J.J. Abrams, thought this Rey character was Palpatine's granddaughter. No way. Anyway, have a plan. And I think everybody can agree with that. The second thing I think they need to do, and that's move forward. What do I mean by that? Listen, I love the original trilogy of Star Wars. I really liked Rebels. There's so much about Star Wars that I love, but move on. Not everything has to. Let's look at a movie about young Lando. Let's look at a movie about young Han. Ooh, what happens with blah blah. Like, I'm not saying that some of that stuff hasn't worked. Of course it has. But you got to stop living in the past if you're Star Wars. It's time to move the universe of Star Wars forward. Tell new stories with new characters and new corners of the galaxy. This is a big, vast, rich playground that George Lucas created. And the real genius of George Lucas's creation was the fact that you don't have to just stick with the same couple of characters in a universe that's occupied by billions of trillions of beings. Move the story forward. Quit reaching back. If you don't grow, you die. And I think at some point here, and I'm not saying never do some kind of an anthology look back kind of story. I'm not saying that. But in general, you got to get out of the 1970s, okay? It's time to move forward, move this thing forward. All right. The third thing that I would suggest, and again, I think most people would agree with this. While not everything in Star Wars needs to be about lightsabers, make sure you include the Jedi, even as you move forward. Whether it's the new breed of Jedi, whatever, I think one of the big, magnificent, imagination-inspiring things about Star Wars always has been the Jedi, has been the lightsabers. In fact, that is so built into the DNA of Star Wars. Move forward, yes, but this is a part of that universe. Tell new ways of telling these stories. Bring in new characters that we have. Whether it's a result of a new Jedi Academy that Rey establishes, or maybe some of the younglings that Luke worked with that then went off. Or, I don't care. I don't know how. But Jedi, in some way, somehow have to be a part of that, because that's part of the big imagination of Star Wars for a lot of people. All right. The fourth thing I would say they need to do is take advantage of the vast universe. Just like I say, DC every once in a while should make some movies that are outside of their cinematic universe. Like Joker is outside of the cinematic universe. Matt Reeves' The Batman is outside of a cinematic universe. I think every once in a while, if they have some main story going on in Star Wars, don't forget to go way out somewhere in the farthest reaches of even the Bespin system and the ninth planet on the outer rim of that system, and some story that's going on there. Take advantage again. This goes back to the idea of use this whole idea of this vast universe you have that George Lucas created. Go and tell some great human stories, but in this wonderful Star Wars context. Take advantage of the vast universe. And the fifth thing that I would say this is have diversity in scale. Now, what I mean by that is you're going to want to have some big epic scale stuff, things where the galactic peace is in the balance, where you have armada fleets fighting other armada fleets, a 1,000 Jedi strong army going off to fight the Uzang Vong or the new remnants, the new iteration of the Sith, or whatever it is. You're going to want to have big giant stuff on scale, yes, but don't forget to tell smaller stories too. Andor, while it's about really the establishment, the background, the underpinnings of what led to the rebellion, it was a very small scale story. It's kind of following these little individuals going around and their interactions that they're having. tell these big, grand, epic stories. Yes, but don't forget to tell these smaller stories that can be even richer than the grand scale things. So I would say, if I was sitting down with whoever the next president of Lucasfilm was going to be, and they asked for me for 5 pieces of philosophy to bring into developing new movies, I would say this. Number 1, have a plan. Number 2, move Star Wars forward. Number 3, don't make it just about Jedi, but make sure you do include Jedi. Number 4, take advantage of the vast universe. And number 5, make sure you constantly have diversity in scale. So that's what I would suggest that Star Wars, from a philosophical point of view, needs to do. Chris, you heard my list. If you're sitting down with lunch with whoever the new president of Lucasfilm is and says, what are some things we need to keep in mind moving forward to make this work? Are any of my things stand out to you? Do you have some others? What would you say?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a galaxy far, far away, a whole ass galaxy.
Whole ass.
A whole ass one. Why are we always in the same kind of solar system? Why are we constantly working with the same planets and same people is my issue. You know, Tatooine is focused on a lot for something that's the dimmest star, essentially, right?
There's a bright center of the galaxy. We're the farthest
thing
planet
away
from it.
It's not that. And yet we're so always there because of the Skywalker of it all, right? And when I say Dickensian, I mean because every character is interconnected, typically, within the Star Wars universe and within the mythos. And that is interesting in some stories, not in all of them. Making Rey related to Palpatine completely diminished her story because there was this great thing being set up, whether you like it or not, I think this was a good thing, of the Force wasn't this familial lineage bloodline thing.
It never had been
And
in
it
all the
hadn't been
history
before,
of Star Wars. Yeah.
right? And it was bringing back anyone. An orphan in the desert who has been sold into slavery can have the Force within them. This girl who is a scavenger on a planet can have the Force within her. This boy who is on some other gambling
Sweeping
planet
the
can grab his
stalls.
broom that way.
Yeah.
I got so excited about that moment of, yes, that's the Force.
Yeah.
It picks randomly. It isn't about who your parents are necessarily. That's great when, you know, we see the Jedi babies popping up. That's fun. But anyone could have the Force, right? And I thought that was a much more interesting story of being called to this, having this power, and then deciding what you do with it from there. Not because of your family ties or your last name or whatever you pick your last name to be for that matter, but because of something within you that you have no control over and you learn to harness.
Well, Daisy Ridley herself in an interview pointed out that J.J. Abrams on set of the first movie specifically said to her, she's no one.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we get to the last movie and she's Palpatine somehow. The Emperor's returned.
No one was so much more interesting because you as an audience member can relate to it so much more. It's why you can relate to Luke Skywalker, because for the most part, most of us in some way are that kid in a town that they don't want to be in, that they think they could be greater than, that they could do something more than if they just got the chance. And that's something that draws you in as the audience and you can relate to. And then the other thing of this, too, is Star Wars, fundamentally, Lucas made it so things could move backwards and forwards in time. And we're starting to get some of that, right, with going back and seeing how the Jedi Order was formed. But with that, too, move backwards and forwards in time and take that kind of Elseworlds approach. Yes, you can talk about how the Republic has been affecting things. Yes, you can talk about different wars and things. But you don't have to have everyone know each other. And you can have things happen on other planets that are completely removed from the saga of the Jedi and the Sith and just deal with interplanetary issues.
Well, that's part of the reason why I loved the idea of doing Old Republic. Because even, well, John, that's in the past. Yes, it's in the past, but it's still moving forward because you're going back tens of thousands of years. So you are completely disconnected really from the events of the Star Wars trilogy and all that kind of stuff. You're having all new characters that really you can do anything because so much time separates the Old Republic from the time of the modern movies that anything you do in that series of movies is consequence free when it comes to the events of the modern movies, right? And so you can still move forward by telling things in the Old Republic, just maybe not the High Republic, which is only like 30 or 40 or 70 years earlier. Where, okay, well now you're good. And remember High Republic, Yoda is a part of the High Republic. It's like, come on guys, let's get out of all the characters we already know. Let's do something new and fresh.
Is there an aspect that you think they can, like, that they are doing well in? Like, that you don't, like for me, the introduction of new creatures has been like, it's always cool to me, like animals and stuff like that. I think they do a great job. They're always in the same sandy place. You know what I mean? It's always in a desert somewhere, but we get a new creature. I think they need to go other places for me, at least.
I agree. I mean, it's been a joke for a very long time that every planet in Star Wars is a one environment planet. It's either a jungle planet, a desert planet, a snow planet, or a city planet. Like, that was the joke for a long time,
and
right?
it's empty, and there's no population. It's like
always
there has to
empty.
be a city with a bunch of people that we can
they
visit.
they have that as well. They do work that stuff in there as well. But yeah, and here's one of the big things too about like the Star Wars sequels was that there was never any explanation about how did we get from the events of Return of the Jedi to where we are with the events of The Force Awakens. Like, never, like, okay, we're just told the First Order is here. Great. We never got any indication. Where the hell did this First Order come from? Now, later on, they covered that in one of the Princess Leia books. It was called Bloodline, and they covered that a little bit. But I mean, anyway, there's been so many mistakes. We could go on all day, but we're not going to do that.
You can.
All right. With that down, guys, let's move on to this, shall we? The big story in all of entertainment for the last 4.5 months has been the strikes. First, the writers went on strike, then the actors went on strike, and here we are now, over 4.5 months into this strike, and for the first time ever, there might actually be a little glimmer of hope. The other day, we found out that the writers and the studios were sitting down for, I think, only the third time, and they were going to sit down yesterday and actually have negotiations face-to-face, which is great, right? But then news reports came out later in the evening that not only had the two sides agreed and put out a statement together, they put out, the studios and the writers, first thing they've done together, put out a statement, a joint statement saying they were going to meet again today. As a matter of fact, as we speak, as we're recording this video, the two sides are sitting down and meeting as we speak. And a report came out last night that sources inside the union and the studios are telling them there is a possibility a deal could be reached today. Take a look at this. So the headline started to run that Hollywood studios writers near agreement to end the strike and hope to finalize the deal Thursday, sources say. One of the insiders, of course, David Faber, said, after face-to-face meetings today, writers and producers near an agreement to end the WGA strike met today and hope to finalize a deal tomorrow. That's today. According to people close to the negotiations, who, while optimistic, warn that without a deal tomorrow, the strike will likely continue through the end of the year. Okay, so what that tells me is this. It sounds to me like they've got almost all their I's dotted and T's crossed. Remember, there was a laundry list of things that the WGA were looking for, and obviously a laundry list of things that the studios were looking for. And it sounds to me that probably most of those issues they've come to some compromises on. And it sounds like there's one or two issues left that they have some philosophical agreement, but aren't yet all the way there. And it sounds like they're saying they're either going to go in there today and say, yes, let's compromise on this, or they're both going to dig in their heels and say, nope, we want it our way. Too bad, writers. We want it all the way our way, or screw you, or vice versa. And they're going to walk away from the table and we're going to be stuck with this for another few months. Listen, there has been nothing in the last 4.5 months that has come close to sounding this positive, to sounding like there could actually be a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, I don't know what those final couple of sticking points might be. It sounded like they were starting to get closer together on base salaries. Sounded like they were at least getting closer before. So that's probably one of the issues they've settled. It sounded like the studios were moving more over to the WGA side as far as AI protection goes. Maybe, I'm guessing that's probably one of the issues they've all decided upon, some kind of middle ground compromise. They've probably got that settled. Probably length of contracts is one I'm guessing they maybe have come to an agreement on. The one thing, and there's 7 or 8 or 9 of them. The two that I'm going to guess are still the big things are writer room minimum sizes. And even that one, I think they could probably come to an agreement on. The big one is going to be residuals, which is something we've talked a lot about, is what does residuals look like today? Because residuals mean something completely different today than it did even just 5 years ago. You can't take the old model of residuals and just say, apply it today. It doesn't work. How does that work? How does that look like? And maybe with them saying they hope to finalize a deal today, that maybe they've already got some basic agreement that, okay, today a residual, maybe both sides agree that now a residual means this instead of this. Okay, we can agree on that. Now maybe we just got to figure out specific numbers, and like, okay, we agree that it means this now and it doesn't mean that anymore, but how much does that equate to us getting? Or how much does that equate to us having to give you, or whatever? Maybe, again, I'm speculating, but I am hopeful that maybe by the time I have dinner today, by the time I shove that last bite of, veal parmesan in my gullet, we're going to find out that there's a new deal. And if that deal gets made, maybe that lays the groundwork for a SAG deal as well. I don't know. Chris, I'm choosing to be naively optimistic. You've read all the reports
It's a
here.
very new look for you.
I know. I am choosing to be naively
I
optimistic.
don't know how I feel about it.
You hear about this. You're seeing the reports coming out of the outlets. What's happening? Are we going to get a deal? How optimistic do you feel? Are you still pretty pessimistic? I don't know. What are you thinking about all this? What's the big takeaway for you here?
The joint statement is the thing that gives me hope here.
Agreed.
Because there's been so much, we're not going to say anything. No, I'm going to go tell the media now. Oh, you shouldn't have told the media. That was so mean. It's been, schoolyard politics kind of these kinds of like, this one's being a bully. This one's not listening to me. I'm going to go tell everyone. Doing this as a joint statement shows so much maturity on both sides, and that makes me really happy. CNN Business reported yesterday that we are inching closer to the writer and actors strike costing about $6 billion. We have passed the $5 billion threshold in what ultimately is going to be cost for all of these different signatories and all of these other, members of the
Well, that wasn't just the signature. That was also like all the auxiliary industries and everything like that.
For New York, Chicago, all our big main hubs, right? So it was already going to cost that. We've reported on this show that Warner Brothers is looking at losing $500 million just themselves, right? I think a lot of this too is it's a lot easier to come back to the negotiating table after the people who you said, I can wait you out, went, try me. Try and wait me out. You are going to be the ones who are going to wait out. Let's see how that goes for you. Because at the end of the day, it's an entertainment industry. It's a business and money talks. So even though these are requests that are going to change the bottom line of what the industry is making and what executives are making, this has cost them so much money. Money that I don't think anyone anticipated losing because no one saw this lasting, 143 days? That's nuts. That's so long, and everyone thought this was going to be a blip, myself included. I was very naive at the beginning of this. It's going to last like 2 weeks. We learned our lesson in 2007.
That's what they said after World War I and entering World War II.
Man.
I thought at first it could last a while, but I kind of got more optimistic when the actors' strike was about to start, and the date that the actors' strike was supposed to start came, and the actors and the studio said, hey, we've mutually agreed to extend the deadline another week. That's when I got optimistic. I thought, they must be close to a deal, right? So they'll get that polished off, and then the directors have a deal, the writers have a deal. It'll pave the way for the writers to get there. Sorry, the actors and the directors have a deal. Mm-hmm. It'll pave the way. But then, of course, we saw no deal for SAG Caine, all this kind of stuff. By the way, I did see the report too. It goes both ways. I think it was Forbes that put out a number of how much they think collectively writers and actors have lost.
Yeah.
It's look, let's just put it this way. Everybody's lost a lot of money.
Well, and almost everyone's going to lose their insurance.
Yeah.
Unless you made a ton of money this year as an actor, which, honestly just means you are an A-list actor, you lost your insurance this year because you didn't work for 60 some odd days and you have to make minimums to qualify for it. So a whole bunch of people, we are going to see the repercussions of this strike for so many months. Even if everything is resolved today, it is going to have this trickle out effect that is really upsetting because everyone loses at the end of the day.
There's a lot of blood on the floor.
Yeah.
There's a lot of blood on the floor. And I already know it's going to happen. A deal's going to get made, whether it gets made today or later. A deal's going to get made, and I can already tell you, a lot of people like myself and others are going to look at the deal and go, okay, this all seems rather reasonable. Why the fuck did it take you 4 months to agree to this? Because this all looks fairly reasonable. Like, I guarantee you that's going to happen at some point. But here's hoping. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I hope by the next time you hear me say the words, well, greetings and salutations, everybody, I'm hoping it's going to be, to announce and usher in the fact that we've got a deal and maybe they can get this industry moving again. We can only hope. All right, guys, listen. With that down, we're now going to move over and start taking questions from our YouTube channel members. But before we get to that, we're going to take just a moment and thank another sponsor of today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast, our great friends, my mobile service provider, and they should be yours, Mint Mobile. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Mint Mobile. Signing your life away to a big wireless provider is kind of like being trapped on a roller coaster from hell. Sure, it looks like fun at first. They probably even threw in a free phone, but now you can't get off. Month after month of insane bills and unexpected thrills, like overages and surprise fees. If that sounds like your current big wireless plan, it's time to get off the ride with Mint Mobile. For a limited time, wireless plans from Mint Mobile are just $15 a month. That's unlimited talk, text, and data for just $15 a month. You guys know before I came to Mint Mobile, I was paying triple what I am paying now on the standard big wireless plan, and I will never go back. All plans come with unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. To get your new unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped right to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea. Cut your wireless bill to just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends at Mint Mobile for being my mobile service provider and for sponsoring this episode of the John Campea Show podcast. All right, guys, with that all down, let's now move over and start taking questions from our YouTube channel members, shall we? Chris, what do we got up here first?
From Calvin, John, you've seen some YouTube, like Dan Murrell got stolen, lots of money from Kast Media and ad revenue. I remember you changed your company some time ago, so maybe you have something to comment. Oh, he did.
Oh, yeah, we're ahead of you, man. We're ahead of you. Yeah, go back a little bit earlier in the video. We definitely commented on that. Again, it's not a coincidence Dan put his out as well. We're under the same business management sort of thing. I don't even know how to properly say that. Maybe it's not. Let's just say we're kind of under the same umbrella, Dan and I. But yes, so I've go back a little bit earlier. I definitely had some things to say. All right, what's next?
From Ariel, hi, John and the crew. So I just finished one of my all-time favorite books, Blood Meridian. If you've ever read the book, what do you think? And do you ever think they'll make a movie? I heard it was unfilmable.
I'll be honest with you, I've never heard of the book.
This is when we need Rob. He's so well read.
I bet Rob would know
He
this
knows
one,
everything.
but I'm not. Have any of you guys even heard of the book?
It sounds familiar, but I've never read it.
All right. What's next?
From Sam Fisher for Chris. BritBox recommendation. Yay! Death in Paradise, QI, love QI. Friday Night Dinner, Midsummer Murders, Call the Midwife, all great, and some of my favorite British shows outside Doctor Who. Death in Paradise and Friday Night Dinner are the only ones I don't know. So thank you very much for those.
Point of query.
Huh?
What is BritBox?
Oh, so BritBox is a British streaming subscription service.
Oh, really?
That we got basically because Logan wanted to get new scripts for his students and everything. And there's only so much content on Netflix that's, Irish or this, that, or the other.
Right.
And so we started watching stuff on there. So we get a lot of BBC programming and other stuff, which is really
awesome.
cool. Yeah.
All right. What's next?
From Dr. Stinky. Hey, John and crew. As someone born in the early 2000s,
What's that like?
I would love to hear what the cinemas were like in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s. Love y'all. Bring on the filthy.
70s, I can't answer. I mean, I don't have any. I was too young.
I only got 90s for you.
But I do remember. Now, it only lasted a very little while. I think I've told you guys before that I think the first movie I ever went to without my parents, and I might be wrong about this, was the Kenny Rogers movie, Six Pack. Oh, you know what? It wasn't the first one I went to without my parents. I think one of my parents might have been there. But the Kenny Rogers movie, Six Pack.
I know it.
And I remember having to stand for the national anthem.
Huh.
What?
In the earliest days of me going to the movies, I think before a movie would start. Now, I don't know if this is true in the States as well.
No, I don't remember that ever.
But in Canada, at least at the Famous Players, there's Famous Players doesn't exist anymore, but they merged with another company. But Famous Players Cinema would play the Canadian national anthem before a movie would start, and everybody in the theater would stand up for the national. Again, I don't know if that lasted very long. It didn't. Yeah. So I mean, so that was a big.
crazy.
Other than that, it was pretty much. The movie-going experience, take away some of the new amenities and everything, it was pretty much what it is. The big difference, of course, was to get your movie ticket, you actually had to go to the movie theater and get in line at the ticket booth, buy a ticket and get in line, not have pre-assigned seating. Oh, those were the dark days.
And no stadium seating.
Yeah, and no stadium seating. It was all flat row seating. It's again, those were the dark days. All right, what's next?
From Red One Real Talk, have you seen the trailer for the Percy Jackson series? Those novels felt like the last YA series that really had Gen Z in a stir, so I think this has some potential to do well. But I've been burned by Disney Plus more than I'd like, so I'm tempering my expectations for it.
I gotta say, I liked the trailer. Actually, Rob and I talked about it yesterday. I liked that trailer. I thought it was pretty good. And now I'm one of the people who I quite enjoyed the first Percy Jackson movie. The sequel that came after wasn't so great, but I like the first one. This definitely looks like it's got a lot of potential. I keep forgetting the kid's name from the Adam Project who plays young
Walter Scoble.
Scoble, right. Yeah. I think this kid, even in that horrible movie he did with Owen Wilson, Hidden Base
Secret Headquarters.
Yeah. Oh God, that movie was so bad, but he was great in it. And I'm looking forward to seeing him play this role. So I think it looks promising. Let's just say that. All right, what's next?
From CJ Rebirth, have you guys seen V for Vendetta? I finally saw it last night, and I was surprised how much I enjoyed it. It stars Hugo Weaving and Natalie Portman as V and Evie. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we talked. I mean, obviously we haven't talked about that movie in a while, but yes, V for Remember. Anyway, it's really quite good. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll admit there are some people I know in my circles who think it's like just one of the greatest movies. I'm not one of those people. I think it's very good, and I remember it very vividly. But I don't think it's like a top 20 greatest film of all time or anything like that. But yeah, I liked it a lot. And man, I could listen to Hugo Weaving read the phone book. Mm-hmm. That dude, first of all, I just love him in anything, but it's that voice. He carries such conviction in his voice with everything and anything he does. But yeah, I remember it very fondly.
Yeah. If you really enjoyed the film too, CJ, you should read the graphic novel by Alan Moore. It's wonderful.
All right, what's next?
From Brian Meadows. I got a notification from the Google Play Store that Disney Plus is increasing to $140 annually. I remember it started at $70, $80, and right now it's $110. Could this be the start of them trying to inflate the price so it'll convince more people to switch to the ad tier? Are we already at that point?
Yeah, so they announced the price increase a while ago because now I can't remember what the monthly price is now. I think it's like $14 now. And when they launched just a couple of years ago, it was literally half that price. But again, remember when they launched, we all said, don't get used to this. This $7 a month thing is not going to be the regular price. This is just a starting price. The amount of content, the expense to run something like this is huge. I still contend that the prices on all the streaming services, whether it's Max, Netflix, Disney Plus, whatever, I still contend the individual prices for each of those streaming networks are reasonable when you consider what you get for it. Like, are you kidding me? Like $15 a month, I get this library. I mean, it's actually fairly reasonable. The problem becomes once you start stacking all those streaming services up, and then all of a sudden you're spending $90, $100, $110 a month, and then you got to get picky and choosy about which services you hold. But these services are very expensive to run. Almost all of them are losing money. But I believe you are right, and I've said this before. I believe the streamers have realized this fable, this myth that streaming was going to be this big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow isn't practical. It's not real. And so now they're all introducing these ad-supported tiers. And I think ultimately you're going to see them try to move people more and more to the ad-supported tiers where, look, the reality of streaming right now is it doesn't matter if 1 billion people watch your show on a streaming service. That doesn't make one nickel for the streaming company. I know it's weird to hear that, but it's true. It makes no financial advantage for them whether 100 people saw it or 100 million people saw it. But if they can move everybody over to an ad-supported tier, well then suddenly, if you get 1,000 people watch it or 100,000 people watch it, That's 100 times difference because you're getting that many more people watching the ads, and ads are being delivered and they're making money on those ads showing. So yes, I do think you're going to see them gradually but surely bumping up those regular non-ad plan prices up, and those are going to become premium prices at some point. They're not yet, but they will, and really try to encourage people to go back to the ad-supported plans. And like Chris, you are an ad-supported plan person, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really not a big leap to get a lot of people to go over and use that.
Listen, one, I'm cheap. Two, I'm a commercial actor, and so I need to
That's
see
true.
what commercials look like and go, oh, I fit into this thing. I know this. When actors say they don't watch commercials or they don't watch TV,
They lie.
they're full of it.
All right, what's next?
From Aaron, thank you for putting me on The Warrior and the Bear.
Nice.
Both very different shows, but have the same energy. Love them so much.
I still have not watched season 3 of Warrior. I'm very excited about it. I'm waiting till I can actually really dive right into it. Then the Bear was, I'll be honest with you, when Bear started, I looked at it, I thought this does not look interesting at all. And it's one of the best things on television is the Bear. So I'm glad you got on both of those and you discovered both of them. All right, what's next?
From Mighty Tank, just watched the latest Hot Ones episode featuring NSYNC, and apparently they were almost Jedi Knights in
Yep.
Attack of the Clones. Not sure if that's common knowledge, but it's the first time I've heard it. I'm so
Yeah.
excited to watch this episode when I go home.
Anne sent me this video. It's amazing. First of all these rumors that NSYNC may get back together and tour together again, right? Right. Okay. So every woman I know over 30 is like losing their minds right now. Ryan's sister is already like planning. Okay, they could schedule tour this and I'll book this off. But Anne sent me this great video, that's going viral, of this home video of this wife talking to her husband in the kitchen. And they got to be in their early 40s. And the wife is just like, okay, she's talking to her husband. She's like, so there are some rumors going around that NSYNC may tour. Now I'm thinking I can budget somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 for buying tickets. And the husband's just, you could tell he's trying so hard just to be a supportive husband and treat her as his partner and all this kind of stuff. Like she's not looking for his permission. Well, yeah, she was asking his permission because if you're partners, you got to ask your partner's permission. But he's like trying to be like, and he's not trying to be a dick about it. He's not saying no. He's like, okay, why do you have to spend $3,000? She goes, well, it's in sync. And this is just something I don't understand. But Ray, I don't know if you knew this. Your sister? She's also that woman. Like, how much can I spend to travel to wherever I need to go in the world to go and watch an NSYNC
Look,
show?
you don't know how excited she was when she actually, this is when I think they still had payphones.
Back in
She
the
called
day.
me from Vegas and she said, guess who I just met? I was like, who? In Sync, and I knew she was
That's
a
what
big
she
fan.
told me that story.
I was so happy for her because you know what? You're gonna fan out on a bunch of things when you're a kid. You're gonna fan out on groups. You're gonna fan out on things, people on TV. She fanned out on them, and then like the very first time she tried to go to a concert, she met them. Like not meet them like in a meet and greet, like at a restaurant.
Yeah,
They were
she-
sitting
while
there.
she was in Vegas,
and she went in there and they took pictures. Dude, I was
Do you
so
know
happy.
she's got a newspaper,
Yeah.
a front page of a newspaper clipping of her and Jay Lynn. She was on the front page of the local Riverside newspaper because they had gotten tickets to NSYNC, or they won some NSYNC contest or something
Could
like
have
that.
been a happy year for her.
Boy,
That
it's
was
just,
a
it's something
great-
big mind. Now,
I
as
love
far
them.
as them almost being in Star Wars, yeah, that's actually common knowledge. That now they weren't going to be main characters or anything like that, but yeah, they were almost popped in there. I can't remember why it didn't happen, but something along those lines. But yeah,
Because they
almost
said,
popped
tell
up
me
in
why, and they were like, that's Backstreet Boys.
Tell
Get out
me
of here.
why.
Come on, Chris.
Get out. Yeah.
Come on, Chris.
there. Oh, we got time for two
You're
more.
better
What's
than that.
next?
No, I'm not. They were the first concert I ever went to. My mom took me. It was magical.
Oh wow.
Mighty Tank. Just watched the late. Oh, that's the one I just did. Matt. Speaking of the Hunger Games topic from yesterday, the new one looks really good.
It does.
But those first two were fantastic, especially the second, Catching Fire. That was a crazy theater experience. What's your favorite of the movies?
The second one was the best one. I mean, I like the first one. I thought the first one was pretty good. I thought the second one was a really good movie. I was very, very surprised. I liked it a lot. Fourth was the worst. 3 was the second worst. But yeah, that second movie to me. What was it? Was the second one called Catching Fire? I think the second one was called
think
Catching
so.
Fire. Yeah, because there was
It's kind
Mockingjay Part 1 and Mockingjay
Yeah.
Part 2.
P1, P2.
Yeah, the second one was great. I remember being very, very surprised by it. And color me shocked. That new trailer dropped for the new one. And it's just a damn good trailer. I don't know if the movie's going to be good, but it looks really good. Do you have a chance to see the new Hunger Games trailer?
Yeah, I went from having absolutely no interest in it to, oh, okay.
Yeah.
This looks interesting.
When Viola Davis is saying, "What are the Hunger Games for?" I'm like, oh my God, she carries so much power.
Yeah.
And
Of
then the tank of snakes.
And then a big tank of
That's
snakes.
my worst nightmare ever.
All right, last question of the day. What do we got next?
From, oh gosh, sorry, Naftil Cotter. I'm so sorry if I butchered your name. Do you think the lack of enthusiasm for the upcoming Ray movie is due to Lucasfilm's constant announcement of movies with people taking a wait and see attitude?
You know what? That is absolutely one of the things we should have mentioned yesterday, is that's part of the reason for, I think, lack of enthusiasm for anything that gets announced today. Like, look, we really should be geeking out more and talking a lot more and anticipating and speculating about a James Mangold, the guy who directed Logan, the guy who directed, I was going to say Ford v Ferrari, the guy who directed like some of the great movies of our generation is doing a Star Wars movie. We should be really excited about that. The problem is there's a lot of us, including me, that's like, I don't really know if that's happening. They come out and announce, oh, we're doing this Ray movie. Okay, yeah, but are you? Are you really? I feel like Ron Burgundy going, I don't believe you. Because so much stuff they've announced. Like they announced Taika Waititi. Oh, but he's not.
They're going to believe us when we do it live.
Yeah. They're just going to act it out live. We got a Rogue Squadron movie coming, but they're not.
Aww.
Kevin Feige's doing a Star Wars movie, but he's not.
That one hurts still.
That one hurts still a lot.
The Rogue Squadron one.
I thought that was going to be great. I thought it had so much potential. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think there's an element of any Star Wars announcement that happens today of I'm automatically, just as a starting point, 50% don't believe it. So now I think there's a lot of other reasons people aren't excited for the Rey thing, because Rey kind of is the representative character of the divisiveness of the Star Wars sequels. Again, I love the first one, hated the last one, kind of in the middle with the middle one. A lot of people loved him, a lot of people hated them, but whatever. Rey, fairly or unfairly, became the face of that division. And I think that's a big reason why people don't feel any excitement for it. But I also believe you're 100% right. The other part of that lack of enthusiasm comes from the fact that I think everybody is just not going to get excited about any Star Wars announcement right now, because we just don't believe those Star Wars announcements are actually going to come to be. I know, you got any theory on that, Chris, about why there's not a general feeling of excitement for a Rey movie?
I mean, part of it I feel is because of how divisive those films were. Another part is just because of how Star Wars fans as a whole, and I say as a whole, I know that's a sweeping generalization, but the fandom's gotten pretty toxic, and I think everyone has very, very strong feelings about how their Star Wars should be.
Yes.
And that's one of the things. We got to be like the Jedi. We got to let go. All right? Don't let the hate flow through you. Let's just see what happens.
All right, guys. And that'll do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show podcast. Maybe the next time we do one, there's going to be a writer strike that isn't happening anymore. I don't know. Fingers crossed. Thank you to everybody who's joined us here today. I want to thank everybody in the room. We got Ray Ora.
Yeah.
Jonathan Voico.
See ya.
Chris Carr's been here.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, guys, don't forget the audio. If you're checking this out on YouTube, all of you should be subscribed to our podcast feed, because in that podcast feed we put the audio versions of all the John Campea Show podcasts, but also our open mic shows as well go into that podcast feed, because you can't always be in front of a YouTube video. Go and subscribe to it today. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your favorite podcasting app of choice in. So that'll do it for us for now, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.